I'm going to give it a minute or two to kind of let the beginning of the video or the live stream cycle, and then I will start my spiel. Today we're going to be talking about self-care. You know, let's see here. 7:38. So at 7:40, I will go ahead and we will start the discussion. I hope that everyone who joins is having a wonderful day today. Just in case you're new here and you're just joining for the first time, I am Blind Justice. I am called that because I am blind and I go by Justice. So there you go, because that's my middle name. So I am Blind Justice. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Let's see here.
Speech on. 0 watching now. 0 likes.
All right, cool.
Welcome to live chat. Chat options button. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your speech off.
All right, at 7:40, we will go ahead and start talking about self-care. 7:39, one more minute, and then the self-care talk shall begin, and we're going to kind of dissect what does self-care mean, really, and the different types of self-care that there is, because it's not a singular form, right? Which you will understand after today's video and live stream talking about self-care. All right, it's got to be right at it, right?
7:39 p.m.
No, it's still 7:39. Dang, we still got a little bit of time. So yeah, I'm just going to be talking about that self-care today. Talking about the importance of doing what you got to do to get that self-care that you need. And no, really, no, we're not talking about what we're talking about is, what do people mean when they say it sounds like you need some self-care? Great. I like the fact that you say that, but maybe people don't know what it actually means,
Speech on.
to implement self-care. Let me see what time it is.
7:40 p.m.
7:40. Okay. I'm going to check comments and then we'll get into it.
Chat options button. Welcome to live chat. Chat options. Creator tools
All right, no
button.
comments.
Chat option. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and about speech off.
All right, so self-care is it has to be sorry. Take two. Action. Self-care has to be initiated with intent. It can't be a passive thing that you do. It has to be something that you are purposefully doing for the act of self-care, right? So, for example, and that pretty much means that you're doing it for the benefit of self-care, but anything can fall under that, as long as you know you're doing it for the benefit of self-care. But how do you know you're doing it for the benefit of self-care, and what does it look like to be doing something with the benefit of self-care? That's the question, because the idea of receiving self-care, people say, "Oh, I'm experiencing burnout. I need to do some self-care. Oh, I'm stressed out. I need to do some self-care." Great. Well, self-care is broken up into three categories if we're looking at it through a clinical lens. I did some research to double check. I read some articles, and we're going to talk about the three sectors of self-care today. Let's see if I have any comments, and probably not. But I'm going to check, because I promised myself I would check about every minute or so.
Speech on. Welcome to live chat. Vlogs. Hi button.
Oh, hey, I do have a commenter. Hello. Hope you're doing well today. I'm going to be discussing when someone tells you it seems like you need some self-care. What do you do then? What does self-care mean? So this is going to be a discussion breaking down the three sectors of self-care. So we're going to get into that now.
Max 619. Bro, what is this? Button.
Well, hello, Max 3.
Max 619. Bro, what is this?
619.
Max 619. You like Quazo? Button.
You like Quazo? Oh, I like Quazo?
Max 619. Adjust unzipped. Button.
Okay, good for you, my friend. Hey, if this is what it takes to get you where you need to be, I'm honored.
Chat options. Button.
All right, so the three levels of self-care, or 3 sectors, sorry, not levels. And I'm going to explain them, and then we're going to dive in deep, okay? We have emotional self-care. And then we have mental, and then we have physical. Those are the 3 parts of the triangle of self-care. And you can do activities. Usually when you're doing something that's self-care related, you're stimulating at least 2 points of the triangle when it comes to the self-care trifecta. Because if you can hit at least 2 points, the benefits of the self-care become magnified, based off of the articles that I read. And so the first thing you have to do is just figure out that you have a need for self-care, right? And that's going to be a video within itself, is how to recognize when you need to implement self-care. But so once you get to the point where you figure out that self-care is something that I need to start regulating and doing more, then you have to start trying to figure out, all right, what can I do that can appeal to at least 2 of these 3-point sectors: mental, emotional, and physical. Those are the 3-point sectors. To stimulate 2 of those that benefits me and relieves me of stress. Like I said in the beginning, it has to be something that you do actively, meaning that it's a meaningful activity with the purpose of self-care. Right? So it's something that you're going into with the idea of saying, this is for my self-care, specifically for that. It can be for other things too. Everything we do in life is influenced by thousands of things, right? But so it could be other things as well. But that has to be one of the primary focuses to the reasoning behind the activity. And so we're going to kind of go through the trifecta here, and we're going to talk about what some activities may look like using different points from the trifecta of self-care. But first, before we do that, I'm going to jump into the comments again and see what people are saying.
Speech off.
Oops.
Speech on. TrueFX. Quit yapping, bro. Button.
All right, TrueFX. I hope you're having a wonderful day, my man.
Mag 619. Adjust unzipped. Button. TrueFX. Chat options.
All
button.
right, so here's whenever you get to the point where you realize that self-care needs to be implemented, and you know the 3 trifecta points, you have to start thinking. And the papers, some of the papers that I read, state that if you can hit 2 out of 3, you magnify the effects of self-care. So let's kind of go through the 3 points and think of activities that we can do that can benefit and hit at least 2 of those sectors. Again, that is mental, emotional, and physical. Those are the 3 sectors. So let's say, for example, reading a book, right? Does that hit 1, 2, or 3 sectors? Well, it's 2. If it's a book that you feel emotionally attached to, then that hits the emotions. And of course, it's stimulating your mental aptitude. So you are hitting 2 out of the 3 primary points within the self-help perspective. So let's say you want to throw something physical in there. See, this is where it can get a little tricky. So physical can be something like taking a walk, running, exercising, lifting weights. There is a huge number of activities when it comes to physical. You know what I mean? And it could be something anything that involves physical accuracy or congruency across the body. Like, for example, playing the guitar is it falls under the physical category of self-help, but it also falls under mental because it requires a learning aptitude, and it can fall under emotional as well, because if you're writing music, you can, put your emotions into what you're writing. So like playing an instrument, massively good as a self-help option. If you're burning out, it seems doing some self-care. That is one that hits all 3. And remember, the more you hit, the more effective it becomes. The more it magnetizes. Not magnetizes, excuse me. What's the word I'm looking for? the more the effects of self-care is magnified. There we go. Thank you, brain. So it becomes very important to be able to hit multiple. So let's say, no, I'm not a musician, but I still want to do something physical. How can I do something physical that can also hit the one of at least one of the other two avenues, mental or emotional? Great question. Let's say, for example, you are religious and you go to church and you're standing up there and you're singing a song out of the hymn, right? Well, that is physical. You're doing a physical action and you are doing something that is meaningful to you, is an emotional connection with your religious perspective. That hits too, but let's say, no, I'm not religious. So, what are my other options? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So, another option would be maybe you're going walking at a place that is meaningful to you, that you have an emotional connection. Maybe there's a place, like for example, for me, there's a lake nearby that I love to go to. There is some, I just love the wildlife there. At the lake, they have ducks, geese, all sorts of fishies, of course, and a whole bunch of other wildlife. And every time I go there, it's just a new experience with all of these aquatic style animals. And I love it. It's filled with previously, you know, good experiences. So for me, it's a physical action. The lake is 3.5 miles around to walk it. So that's physical. And it's emotional because I've developed an attachment to that place. And so walking that lake is a way of doing self-care, right? So I think these were just some examples. And before we get into the next part, I'll check the comments again. You guys have been wild in the comments tonight. I love it.
Speech off.
Oops.
Speech on. Share button. Create a tool. Chat options. True FX. Quit yapping. Bro. Button.
All right, True FX. Okay, no
Chat
new
options.
comments.
Button.
Part of me is happy about that. Appreciate it. Okay, so as I gave some examples, I've named the 3 areas where self-care can be implemented. And I've talked about how touching on at least 2 out of the 3 areas with an activity that it multiplies the effectiveness of self-care. And with the examples I gave, those are just ones that I've personally implemented, right? Or ones that I thought off the top of my head. But the thing is self-care is personalized to the individual, meaning that the person, it's person-centered, right? Self-care is person-centered. Because what may be perceived as self-care for one may be perceived as anxiety-inducing for another, which is why it's self-care. It's something that you know about yourself that can alleviate. It's an activity that you can do actively with the thought in mind that this is self-care to alleviate stressors and to provide improvement and stability in one of those 3 areas, or at least one of those 3 areas. Again, multiplies with more that you do with per activity. So usually we hear about self-care specifically during emotion, right? People will say, "Oh, I've been really down. Have had a high anxiety. It's time for me to implement I need to take some time for self-care." But, another form of self-care is mental, right? Let's say that you are a person who, please keep in mind, this is just a theoretical person. This is no one that I know. Let's say that you are a person that has not had the opportunity to receive education, right? And so maybe self-care for you is mental to get yourself educated to a level to where you feel comfortable being educated, right? People don't really talk about that section as much. But yeah, like mental is about being mentally stimulated, about continuing to learn, about growing your knowledge and your database within your head and being experiencing new things and adding that to, you know what I mean? It's about growing your mind, your memory, like using that muscle of the mind. But so that one is not really talked about as much for self-care, but that absolutely matters for self-care. Now, the third part that we talked about initially, which is physical self care. This one has a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot attached to it, okay? Because maybe you're underweight for your BMI, significantly so. Then wouldn't self-care, physically be gaining the weight? Or maybe you are above your BMI by a massive amount. Wouldn't physical self-care be losing the weight? The answer is yes for both. The answer is yes for both. To a comfortable level that you see fit, right? Another form of self-care or health when it comes to physical would be maintaining, right? Like, for example, as people start to age and they, get up into their 50s and 60s, we start to see a depletion of muscle tissue unless they have resistant training. So, another form of physical self care would be, maybe getting some resistant bands. If you're like 65, and start pulling some resistant bands in order to maintain your muscle capability as you age and it becomes harder to grow muscle and especially maintain muscle. That is also self care for your physical body, which absolutely matters. So, within self care is can only be perceived as self care if the individual who is doing it sees it as such. So that does not mean that if you see someone who is severely thin or severely obese, doesn't mean that you should sit there and just say, "Hey, you should lose weight," or "Hey, you need to gain weight," over and over and over again, because you're not giving them self-care. You can give them advice and from a friend's perspective to be like, "Hey, I think you need to implement some self-care because I'm worried about you because your doctor said that you are likely to die soon if you do not lose weight." Or, "Hey, I think that you might be like, your doctor said that you're incredibly anemic because you're not eating and you're 90 pounds and you're 5'8". And so I think you should do some self care and be curious about what that would look like in your body. Physical self care, right? So the reason why that's controversial, the physical self care, is because a lot of times morbid obesity and being severely thin are indicators of mental health disorders. And so, relatively speaking, all three of these connect points, by the way, mental, emotional, and physical, are interconnected. So, that's why it becomes a compounding thing if you can do an activity that stimulates two out of the three or all three, because if you can compound them, you're improving all three major aspects of where self care can rely, right? So, if someone is morbidly obese or severely underweight, it is a sign of mental illness. This doesn't mean they're always have mental illness, but it is a good indicator that something more is happening, right? And so in those cases, of course, you want to do therapeutic treatment to get to the root of the problem, which is emotional and mental, in order to fix physical, right? Do you see how that works? The physical is absolutely dependent upon the emotional and mental, and it goes all three. The mental is absolutely dependent upon the emotional and physical. And and you see what I'm saying? Like they're all interconnected. It's just, yeah, they're all interconnected because if your hormones are off, that's going to affect your mental and your emotional. And so what happens then? Correct your hormones, your emotions can stable, so on and so forth. Let's say, like they're just all interconnected in that way. So it's really what's really important is to be able to recognize when someone says, "Hey, I think you should give yourself some self care." I would ask, "What do you mean? Are you talking about emotional, mental,
YouTube.
or?"
Now. YouTube. Red circle.
Oh,
Watch live
sorry.
now. Links. Speech off.
I would say, "What do you mean? Should I do emotional? Should I do mental? Or should I do physical self care?" Right? Because obviously, if someone's saying, and no one should tell anyone else what to do like that, but if someone's like, "Oh, don't forget to do some self care this weekend," ask them what they mean by that, because maybe they're seeing something that you're not aware of. Be like, okay, well, hey, can I? Oh, yeah, you think I should implement some self care? Okay, great. I appreciate your perspective. Can you tell me which avenue made you say that, so I know where to address? Because maybe you see something I don't. Is it physical? Is it emotional or mental? And here's another example. Like, let's say that you've been having brain fog a lot and you find out that you're diabetic. So that's been lowering your mental stability, like of being able to do your normal workflow because you have brain fog from having untreated diabetes. And that's causing frustration, which is causing emotional dysregulation. That shows how a physical just led to a mental, just led to an emotional, right? And that being in that mental state causes you stress and causes you to stress eat, which then impacts your physical again. See how we just went around the triangle in that way? So they're all interconnected. So usually if someone is telling you like, "Oh, don't forget to do, implement self-care," the answer then needs to be, where do you see the dysregulation so that I can be aware of it, so that I can see the pattern, right? Because a lot of times it's hard to recognize when you need to implement self care. That is a hard thing to do, which I will be talking about on tomorrow's live stream. And we can go from there to see what to do next. So tomorrow's going to be how to recognize when you need to implement self-care. And that's going to be a huge topic that we must discuss, because if you can recognize when you are starting to experience a state of lost equilibrium between your physical, mental, and emotional, you can start to recognize patterns of needing to implement self-care. And, and by doing so, you can regulate, right? Like for me, this time last year, I was 308 pounds. I've lost a ton of weight in the last year due to my dieting. I'm down to a size medium shirt. Believe it or not, this is a size medium. So, I mean, say what you want to say, but I went from a almost 4XL to a medium in 1 year. So I needed to do physical self-care, right? I that was me pushing a lot of effort into physical self-care because I needed to. I was literally denying my body the love that it deserves, and so I gave it to it for a whole year, and I'm going to continue doing it um, until I get to my final weight goal of 160, which I'll probably hit in about 3 months from now, 3 to 4 at the most. Um, but that's the physical aspect. The mental, like I said, it can be like, for example, you experience something like headaches from reading too much. Let's say you've been working on your mental a lot, and the mental is all about growing your knowledge base and growing your understanding of yourself and the world around you, gaining that knowledge, reading books, watching documentaries, exploring the world, things of that nature, things that are mentally stimulating for you. And just like everyone's body is different, so is everyone's mental. Everyone's got a different perspective of what is mentally stimulating. What may be boring to one may be the most fascinating thing on the planet to another. For example, I have a friend, Dr. Gomez, who is a physics professor, and the greatest thing in the world that he loves to do is measure light waves from stars that are so far away that they don't show up in the light spectrum, and like they're beyond redshifted, right? And so his favorite thing to do to be mentally stimulated is to look at these wavelengths that are not visible to the eyes and run them through calculations to figure out exactly how far away these stars are, so that he can map them out in a 3D map that he's been creating on his computer. Not my cup of tea, but you know what? Good for you, Dr. Gonzalez. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, to him, that's where he is. That's, you have to meet someone where they're at. For him, that's where he is. I could have someone that's mentally struggling with reading at a third grade level, right? So maybe to them, reading books for a third grade level is challenging enough and stimulating enough to satisfy that urge. It's meeting the person where they are. So, and don't ever feel ashamed of wherever that line is for you, because the point of self-care is for it to be enjoyable, but also slightly challenging, right? And some parts of self-care may not be as fun as others. I enjoyed seeing those pounds leave. I enjoyed going from almost a 4XL down to a size medium. I enjoyed that, but the journey I did not enjoy so much. There was days I really wanted to eat ice cream. There was days I wanted to stuff pizza in my mouth, but I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about making sure that it's challenging enough that it feels achievable to you, but also challenging enough that it feels rewarding to you. If it's not challenging enough, then you'll become bored. But if it's too challenging, you'll quit because you'll feel as though it's not something you're capable of doing. The trick is to make it just challenging enough that it becomes fun and you become fully invested, but you can reach the goal. You just got to figure out where that line is for you when it comes to physical, mental, and emotional challenges, right? So that's really the basis of self-care and what that looks like and what that actually means. And the 3 ways in which self-care is implemented. And most of the times you can ask someone and you can say, what does self-care mean? People will say, doing something that relieves the stress. Well, yeah, that's for one version of self-care. What about the other parts of the avenues, right? Physical, emotional, and mental. You know what I mean? Like, you have to make sure that most people don't know the core of self-care, which is all 3 of those, right? And so that's why people get educated, so that they can start to learn what it means to actually implement self-care. Because the more you know about self-care, the better you can be at implementing it, and the better your results will be going forward. I know I went blah, 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 blah for a long time. Let's see if I have any new comments.
Speech on. Excellent. So a good form of self-care would hit at least 2 of the 3 factors. Tailor specifically to the interests of the individual. Correct. Button.
Yes, it has to hit. That's correct. Let me see if I have any other comments, but I will come back to that.
Extra quizzo. It's a shame that so many people judge others without being trauma-informed. Button. True FX. Quit yapping. Extra quick. Cos or COSM. Excellent. Chat options. Button.
Yes, so a good form of self-care hits at least 2 of the 3 trifecta. Because if you hit just one, usually, if you're doing something that hits just 1 out of the 3, if you need to implement self-care, it's probably affecting more than one. So if you can do an activity that hits at least 2 out of the 3, there's a good chance that you can fix all 3. Because if you hit just one, it may not regulate the other 2, but if you hit 2, then the regulation of the third will happen naturally. Does that make sense? Like, for example, if I hit emotional and mental, by reading a book that, like, for example, if I was religious and I was reading the Bible as a form of self-care, right? That's emotional and mental. But let's say that before I started implementing that, I was 300 pounds. Well, by fixing my mental and emotional state, I know I lose the urge of emotionally eating. So then my physical is naturally improved as well. So that's the importance of trying to hit at least two out of the three. Because just hitting one may not regulate the other two, but hitting two will most likely positively impact the third, anyways, in the long term. Does that answer your question?
Speech off.
Oops, wrong way.
Speech on. Cos or cosm. Yes, it does. Great insight. Button.
Yeah, no, that's because how many of you out there have said, man, or have been told, right? Like, therapist terms are tossed around every day by people who don't know what they mean because they have entered the realm of common language, right? Self care used to be just a therapeutic term, but now that it's used commonly in common language, people for don't really realize what it means. You know what I mean? Oh, you need it's like, you know what you need? You've had a rough week. You should do some self-care this weekend. Yeah, but what is that? Do you actually know what that means to implement that? Most individuals actually didn't know what I just told you. I guarantee it. You can ask anyone, just go around asking people. But if you're going to do that, don't be a dick about it and actually inform them. Because by passing the information along, they can be better self-carers. They can love themselves better and understand the principle of self-care. It's like another great example that I like to give for individuals who how therapy language has entered common language is people say, "Oh, I'm asocial," right? Or no, they say I'm antisocial. Excuse me. I just gave away what the right answer was. People say, "Oh no, I'm antisocial. I don't like to be around other people." That's not what antisocial means. It's a part of the umbrella term for people who have psychopathy. That's like literally next to people who are psycho and sociopaths. That's what antisocial means. What people actually think they're saying is asocial, meaning that I like to be alone and not in groups, right? So, part of the dangers of having therapeutic language enter common speech is that it gets misused a lot. And the unfortunate thing is, people who think they understand therapeutic speech but don't will do research and can be completely misinformed because they don't even know the definitions of the words they are saying. And that can cause a lot of problems, right? Especially because if they're looking at something like the DSM-5, which is based off of therapeutic definitions, but they're using common language definitions, it can completely throw things off in a way that is just not helpful, right? Can we agree on that front?
Cos or cosm. Excellent. So a good form of self-care would hit at least two of the three factors. Cos or cosm. Cos or cosm. Yeah, for real, for real. Makes a ton of sense. Button.
Thank you, Causal Cosm. I appreciate you being here.
Danny Custer. Hello, just as waving hand. Button.
Danny, welcome, my man. I hope you're having a wonderful day, Danny.
Extra quizzo. Sorry to hear that trash talk is paused. Button. YouTube. Now. YouTube. Red circle. Watch
Yeah,
live now.
it's okay.
Chat options. Button.
But Danny, I'm sorry I had to start at 7:30 today. Danny, I promise you that this is a live stream that's definitely worth going back and watching because I broke down exactly what self-care is, how to implement it, different forms, the trifecta of self-care, all of the good stuff. And I'm sorry that I started 30 minutes earlier than I told you, and I feel guilty for that. But I had to start 30 minutes early because I have to be off by 9. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough time.
Discord. Summary.
To fully implement what it is I wanted to say without feeling rushed. So I hope you can forgive me, Danny, on that front. But yeah, no. So anytime. So now that you are all informed, and Danny, I know you'll go back and watch because I know you really wanted to, of what self-care actually means. Now that you guys or girls, I don't know who and all watches me, are informed, you can help inform others because the whole point is so that people can be better to themselves, right? And if by giving them knowledge, they have a better understanding of how to be better to themselves and help themselves and regulate themselves and monitor themselves, then that can only benefit society. So The next time you think someone needs self care, be like, hey, I see that as like, I want to come to you as a friend. I see that you've been struggling. And I know that the last couple of weeks have been really hard. You've gone through some serious trials and tribulations. And I am very honored that you were open with me about that. But I would love to talk with you about implementing some self-care, and then just sit there and explain like I did. So it's like, just so you know, I'm not going to give a spiel, but there's 3 sections to self-care. And I would love for you to try to find an activity that can challenge you and also be rewarding in at least 2. That's all you have to say. That's all you have to say. And then explain emotional, mental, and physical. That's it. That's all. They don't need all the other details. They just need to know the basis, right? But just by them being able to define and look at that will just make such a big difference. It really will. All right, I'm gonna check the comments again. I'm sorry.
Creator tools. Chat options. Extra quizzo. Sorry to hear that trash talk is paused. Button.
Oh no, it's a yeah. Okay, so that's fine.
Chat options. Button.
And Danny, I'm so glad you were able to make it tonight. I really do hope you decide to go back and rewatch, because tomorrow's video topic is going to be how to see, how am I going to word it? How to recognize burnout, right? So we're going to continue this self-care trend. So how do you recognize when you need to implement self-care? Well, we're going to go over the first of the 3 sections, and one is burnout. So burnout oftentimes leads to needing self-care. And we're going to talk about how people experience dysregulation between all 3 of the factors where self-care can be implemented through burnout. Excuse me. That's going to be our primary subject for tomorrow. And then outside of that, one of my friends is going through some stuff. And the next day, Saturday, we're going to be talking about what is self-advocacy. We're gonna start looking into that. So Saturday is going to be what is self-advocacy, and then Sunday is going to be, after we talk about what self-advocacy is, for Saturday, Sunday is going to be how to encourage yourself for self-advocacy, how to find the inner strength, and talking about the psychological barriers that you may present yourself that can stop self-advocacy. That's going to be Sundays. So that's kind of like the schedule going forward from here through the weekend. And then I've already, if you guys saw my notepad that I've written down on my Apple, because you know how Apple has the Notes app. If you guys saw my Notes app, I have a note called Video Topic Ideas, specifically under this, this what I'm educated on. And I would just start writing ideas one after another, after another, after another. And I have enough ideas that I can do a video a day starting today. And it will be halfway through October of next year before I run out of topic ideas. So when I say I'm going to do this every day, just so you know, that's how many ideas I've written down as of now. And I'm sure as events unfold through the humanities, and as we experience new things through life between now and October of 2026, I may skip a few of those and implement specific things to what's happening in relevance time, right? So, and that's if I don't even write any new ideas down. But I appreciate you all taking the time to be here with me today and learn what is self-care. What does it mean when someone says that? So I hope this has been educational. And now that you guys all know what self-care means, spread it around. Tell people.
YouTube. Now. YouTube.
Oops.
Red circle. Creator tools. Chat options.
But I
Button.
guess I'm going to call it here for today. Unless you guys have any other questions that you want me to answer, go ahead and write them now. I'll give it like a minute, because I don't know how far back in history that it actually is live based off of me talking. So there may be a 30-second delay or something. So I'm going to give it a minute for you guys to write out your final questions, and I'll answer them to my best capability. And we can proceed forward. And I hope to see you all back here tomorrow where we will continue. Tomorrow is Friday. Hey, Queso, real quickly, what time is the cask? It's 7 o'clock. That's right. 7 o'clock Eastern Standard. I have a podcast that I do with some fellow friends called the Casket Crew Podcast at the Casket King 00 YouTube channel. And so tomorrow night, I won't be going live on here. The earliest I'll be live on here to talk about the subject. You know what? I'm going to put it in stone now. I will be here at 9 o'clock tomorrow. So 9 o'clock tomorrow night, it's a little bit late, but we will go over how to recognize burnout. So if you can be here tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard, I'll be live and we'll be discussing that and moving forward. But I'm going to check comments now.
Speech off. Speech on. Cos or Cosm. Awesome man. This will help a few people I know for sure. Button.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Extra quizzo. Any tips for self-care for folks with CPTSD? Button.
Hold on. Any tips for people with self-care who has what? Let me hear.
Danny Custer. Extra quizzo. Any tips for self-care for folks with CPTSD? Button.
CPT. Did it say CPT or CBD? It's got to be C. That is a good question, Queso.
Cos or Cosm. Awesome man. Chat options. Cos or extra quizzo. Danny Custer. Those are all very important topics. Button.
Oh, thank you, Danny. I appreciate your perspective on that. Yeah, and I hope that you'll go back and watch today's segment on at least up to where you came in. I don't know what time you came in. You may have been here this whole time, Danny. I don't know. But where I break down the 3 areas of self-care. But yeah, so I guess, in Queso, the idea of self-care is to the individual. Like I previously stated, it regardless of capability, it has to be challenging enough to require effort without being too challenged to be perceived as unattainable, right? Because that's the goal of self-care. And it has to be something that brings a positive emotional, physical, and mental stability. That's the key. So it would be different for everyone, right? Like at the end of the day, regardless of any sort of limitations, right? Regardless to anything like that. That would be my answer for you there, Queso.
Extra quiz. Cos or Cos. Extra quizzo. Extra quizzo. Sorry. Complex PTSD. Button.
Yeah. Oh, complex PTSD. Well, a form of self-care can actually be receiving...
YouTube. Now.
Oh.
YouTube. Red. Speech off.
Sorry. If someone has complex PTSD... Yeah, that makes way more sense. I would say... Well, it would depend on... It would have to be something that definitely did not trigger their trauma, obviously. So that would also make it very independent. Like it requires a lot of personal perception of what fits within the realms of the definitions that I described. Because I don't know what caused their complex. And the thing is they may not even be aware of what caused their complex completely. A lot of times trauma isn't remembered, but the effects of trauma still emanate. You know what I mean? So someone who may not even remember the traumatic event from their childhood is still directly impacted by it as an adult. And so on and so forth. So it would require sitting down and understanding what their triggers were and what caused their stressors. And I would say a form of it might be learning, and because the learning would be emotional regulation and mental stimulus. Learning, let's see here, what would be something good in that scenario? Distress tolerance techniques. And there's a lot of them that can be learned. And by learning distress tolerance techniques, you can benefit. That can also be a part of the treatment modality for someone who has that diagnosis. In order to learn distressor techniques around their triggers, in order to be able to cope better whenever they're confronted in everyday life, because that's going to cause emotional regulation and it's going to be an increase to your mental, which will indirectly impact the physical. So, you know what I mean? So that would be my answer for you there, Queso.
Speech on. Extra quizzo. Yes, I hear ya. Button.
Gotcha.
Extra quizzo. Okay. We should chat sometime because I have trouble with self-care. Button.
Okay, absolutely, Queso. I'm down to
YouTube.
chat.
Now. Extra quizzo. Thank you. Button.
You're welcome, my dude.
Extra quizzo. Thanks. I'll look into stress tolerance techniques. Button.
Yeah, distress tolerance techniques. Those would be great for anyone.
Chat options. Button.
But okay, so no other questions. I gave a time. I'm just going to scroll up until I hear comments that I previously heard before to make sure I didn't miss any. I don't want to leave anyone out. And then I'll go ahead and end my video for today. Danny, thank you for being here. Queso, thank you for being here.
Extra quizzo. Extra quizzo. Extra quizzo. Yes, I hear ya. Danny Custer. Complex
Danny,
post-traumatic stress disorder. Button.
Yeah, Danny, thank you for being here.
Extra quizzo. Sorry. Complex PT. Extra quizzo. CPTSD. Extra. Danny Custer. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Button.
Yep.
Extra quizzo. CPTSD. Causal Cosm. Awesome man.
Hey,
This will help a few
Cosm,
people I know for sure.
Thank
Button.
you for being here as well, Causal Cosm. And anyone else that may have just watched and didn't comment. And if you wouldn't mind giving a thumbs up to the video, I'd appreciate it. The algorithm's actually been throwing my videos out a little bit, I've noticed, especially when I live stream like this. Apparently, YouTube likes this type of content because they're sharing it out. So there are new faces that are seeing my stuff for the first time in a while. But I haven't really done a content like this before, so I guess it's just experimenting. But if you could hit a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's topic, if you feel like someone may benefit hearing this, feel free to share it out. Just tell them to skip like the first 2 minutes because I was just kind of like saying we're going to give it a couple minutes to see if anyone joins. But yeah, I appreciate you all being here, and I will see you guys tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard, where we're going over burnout, baby.
Finish. Button.
See you then.
Are you sure you want to stop? Cancel. End. Button.